Super Senpai Podcast. Welcome to the Super Senpai Podcast. This is a bi-weekly, episodic, tokusatsu-related podcast where we're talking about big wrecks in spandex. I'm Pat.
And I'm Grant. And back again, the two hermanos talking about the long-running show that we've been reviewing since the beginning, Lupinranger vs. Patranger. But it's been a while since it's just been the two of us. How you been, Pat?
Doing good. This was, we have a lot on our plate, so just sitting down and watching Lupinranger versus Patranger alone. just
all by myself.
Looking over to my right or looking for somebody to enjoy these moments with. It's just not the same.
It is very lonesome. But yeah, so we did a guest episode with Paula last time, founder of TokuNet, and that was really great, but it put us behind again. I mean, it's not her fault, but we were excited to do it. But we fell behind once again, and so we're trying to catch up. So today we're going to be covering we're going to quickly cover Lupinranger vs. Patranger episodes 25 through 28, just some quick reactions, and then we'll go back to what we normally do and watch episode 29 and sort of do our kind of reactions right after that. But Pat, do we have any big news or anything that's going on right now?
Yes, as of this episode, or I would say even last week, we're officially an affiliate of the Tokusatsu Network.
Hey!
Is that how it works? We call it? We're affiliated with? You know what I mean.
Yeah. We're secondary writer, tertiary writer to whatever they've got going on over there, you know?
Yeah, it's like a Sentai team, and we're like the writer crossover.
We're like the 8th Ranger at this point. Like, we're not the last one to join. Very late in the process, but... But no, it's really exciting to be a contributor over there. Obviously, TokuNet is a hub. We both frequently check it for all sorts of things, and just to be affiliated with them and what they're doing over there is just really awesome. We're really, really thankful for that opportunity, and hope that we can help spread more Toku everywhere. Hopefully amplify, rising tide and all that.
A rider tide kicks all ships.
Rising tide is something that a Kamen Rider bell would say, like rising tide. When like all these water effects would go off.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I'm down with that. I'm really down with that, actually. No, but it's really exciting to be affiliated with TokuNet. We're really appreciative of that and all the work they do over there already, because I have spent untold hours scouring the site for info and looking at pictures, so the idea that we're contributing in some way certainly feels... feels like a big deal for us, so hopefully we pull our weight. But yeah, so in other news too, we do have more special guest episodes in the pipe. We're still working out logistics on those. But like before, we don't want to necessarily reveal it and then have that come to nothing. But just know that we have more things planned and coming up. But yeah, so before we get into it, Pat, have you been watching anything interesting here lately? Any Toku?
I'm going to say this kind of counts as Toku. Not really. But we've actually been watching a lot of The Good Place.
The
special effects budget on The Good Place has been really good.
So what? I don't know anything about The Good Place other than it's a place that is good.
Yeah. Without saying too much, even if it sounds like it, basically, it's sort of what happens when you die. You end up in the good place or the bad place, and the main character shows up, and she's told she's ended up in the good place, but it's a case of mistaken identity. Like, hey, you're this person, but it turns out like her name matched somebody else. She believes that she doesn't actually belong there because none of the memories that she was shown or told from first person are hers. So it's pretty neat.
That is
like,
pretty
how
interesting.
do I stay here? How do I... Right? Yeah, I was hearing about it a whole lot, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I didn't hear that part of it, but hearing this, I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. And the first 2 seasons are on Netflix, so we just like destroy. Like every time we sit down, we're like, what time is it now? Oh my goodness! Like, it's good. It's good. It's quality stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, cool. Anything else, or is that the only Toku you've been watching?
That's the only Toku I've been watching. Besides the solo episodes of Lupin.
Sure,
But,
sure.
ain't the same.
I have managed to get in just a little bit. I don't know if this had been going on during the Paula episode. I don't think it had, but I have started watching Kamen Rider Kuga, which I'm really excited about. I'm working my way. I'm partway through episode 6 right now, which I'll probably try to finish before bed tonight after we get off. I'm really, really enjoying it. This is my 5th Kamen Rider series, and the oldest one that I've watched so far. I've watched Double, O's, Forze, and Build. So this is a bit further back. We're not too far back in time, but I'm a little bit further back than what I've watched so far, which is all kind of Neo Heisei. It's really, really good. I love how it's not like the events are grounded, but the framing and the sort of special effects and technicality on display is very grounded. It all feels very real. It reminds me, if you've ever been to like a theme park and been to like one of those like stage shows where they do like little kind of action tricks and pyrotechnics and stuff like that, and it's good, but you don't ever wonder like, whoa, how did they do that? You know what I mean?
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Like it's good. It's not bad, but I'm not like blown away or anything like that. But it's just something about that is really visceral, and like it's almost like it's very shaky cam is sort of derogative, but it almost has like a found footage feel at times. Just the way the camera, it's not really like a fixed camera. It's always moving around the room and handheld shots a lot of the time. There's something about it that's just really, really appealing. Yeah, I really, really enjoy it. I like it a lot. And Godai and Ichijo and like the core cast is really good. I'm realizing now that O's may have been like a stealthy Kuka reboot. I guess I'm, 10 years late to the party on that one because I saw O's first. But I was like, wait a minute, this is a lot like AG. So there's no equivalent to Ankh yet. But like the Grongi or the other unidentified monsters are they're very similar to the greed, or very similar to them from O's as well. They have that same sort of just like, let's all just stand around and be big mood, you know what I mean?
Arguing in a language you'll never understand.
Right, yeah. So but I'm really enjoying that. And I've been watching Power Rangers SPD, which I am about, did we talk about that last time? I can't remember, it's been a while.
Maybe briefly.
Okay, well, I've been watching SPD, and I'm really, really impressed with it. I tend to enjoy the Power Rangers. I mean, I've pretty much enjoyed every Power Rangers season. Woo! Over here, talking in this audio format. Gotta figure out how to do it. I've pretty much enjoyed myself the whole way through in my chronological rewatch, but I would say Power Rangers really starts to become like, okay, no, this is just good television. I mean, it's children's television, but it's good television. At least, I think a conservative estimate would be by In Space. Like, pretty much from In Space till now, In Space through SPD, which is what I've watched, it's pretty much just all good. And it's all obviously building up from a lot of the earlier stuff, which is quite rough and a lot more inconsistent. But I tend to prefer the seasons that have a professional bent to them. So like your Lightspeed Rescues and Time Forces and so on. And this is in that vein. And obviously the core footage they're working with Deca Ranger is clearly incredible. But God, it's just a really good show. It handles its cast really well. It's very seldom that I look at the choreography in children's television and go, whoa, like, and I'm like, and shocked by what I'm seeing. But some of the choreography in the show is just terrific. Like, better than some martial arts films and stuff I've watched at times, which, I mean, obviously there's going to be a time difference there, but like, I have sat down to watch things that ostensibly were exciting choreography displays that don't quite measure up to some of the 22-minute episodes I spent of SPD. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think, well, I mean, a lot of the martial arts films is actually building up the drama or the sort of building towards the climax of the martial arts, whereas here you get to practice martial arts every week, right? Like,
right. Well, of course. Well, but
not to dismiss it. Obviously, there's a lot more going on. But...
Sure. No, I was just going to say, like, I'm a huge fan of martial arts and wuxia films and so forth, and kung fu films. But some of them are, obviously some of them are billed as technical displays, and they are very much that. But sometimes they're, they don't quite have the impact that you'd expect. And especially sometimes I'm going like, wow, this is just like, if this were just a film in SPD, I'm like, this would be, you could just say like, just come watch this for the fights. But it's also really well written. It's got a good sense of place, and I really, really enjoy it. So yeah, just kind of watching a lot of good stuff right now.
You know what? I was making a joke. I was caught up in making my joke earlier, but I actually have been keeping up with Zio, and to follow up on what we were saying in the episode with Paula, we have actually people were over and were like, "Hey, you want to check this out?" And people have been coming over sort of regularly to watch the week's episode. So
hey,
even if
that's
it's for
great.
a little bit, yeah, it's fantastic, and the feeling of them genuinely being either interested or kind of weirded out by the whole thing, but interested enough to keep coming back is fantastic.
Yeah. Hey, if they're
and
coming
Zio
over
has
to
been
watch.
very odd so far.
Yeah, so I'm curious, how far in are we on Zio at this point?
I think episode 5 just came out.
Okay.
We've seen 4. We took a break this week because of some traveling that's about to happen.
Okay,
but,
so what's your take on it so far? Because I've seen some pretty polarized opinions, at least in my Twitter bubble. I've just seen people who are just like, whoa, Zio's garbage. Subgroups aren't even going to put it out on time. And then other people are like, I can't believe people are hating on Zio. This is great stuff. So I'm at a loss. I can't take the temperature of the room.
My perspective is it's 5 episodes in, so you can't really say any. Like, I guess if you're not feeling it, don't force yourself. It's generally the way to go.
Right.
But if you're just not feeling it at all. But if you're expecting a time travel show if you're expecting a time travel plot in a weekly Sunday morning show to actually make sense, maybe chill out a bit or wait until episode 10-ish, because that's generally when things kind of start to either change or come together. Because they're still setting things up. We've seen things. We've seen how some sort of stuff works. It's all very confusing still.
Right.
But not enough ground has been placed that they can shake it underneath us yet. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Generally, that'll be when you go, oh, I mean, granted, were spoiled by Build being like hot out the gate last year.
Build was just good from the word go, my man.
Mm-hmm. But I will say that I am enjoying what I've seen so far. I'm happy to see old writers visit, especially the ones that supposedly show up for this one, even though some don't, maybe. Like, I don't know. Like, I think Gentaro doesn't actually show up for the 4's episode, which is like, what are you talking about? But they brought 5's actors back, so it's like, I don't know how to feel. But we haven't seen 5 yet, so that will be next week, I think.
Ah, I see. Okay. God, 4 without Gentaro. This is a crime.
I know.
This is criminal.
When they did the preview or the lead up for the episode last week, they showed a dude with a pompadour from behind. I don't know if he doesn't actually show up. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I see.
Or if they do a nudge, he's off somewhere helping people out. I don't know. But that's what I've heard, and so that's what I'm preparing for now.
I see. Okay, well, speaking of talking about Toku episodes and things we're prepared for, do you want to talk about 25 through 28 real quick before we jump into 29?
Yes. I'm going to say the first thing, which is I really wish we watched those episodes together, because I had a really good time by myself.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I wish I was talking about these with Pat in depth. They're so good.
Oh, yeah, from the start, 25 was the first real it's the first sort of real team up episode, where they're either they're working together, even if it's begrudgingly,
sure,
actually not fighting each other while they're fighting. I can't remember his name already. Lyman.
Yeah.
And then of course, Good Cool Kaiser VSX. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. It was awesome.
So good. so good. And Kyrie accepting Noel. It was just, what a big episode. It felt like a real big moment for the show so far, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
I this is one of those things I hate to pump the brakes. I haven't seen the same level of excitement week to week for this series as, say, people had for Build and so on. And I know Sentai always gets, you never know. But people are always, I should say, the Twitter bubble I'm in, Kamen Rider tends to get a lot more kudos than Super Sentai does. But watching these episodes, just the joy that's in it, and just I don't know, it's comfort food to me, I guess.
Absolutely.
But 25 was really good. 26 was a lot of fun with the auction and that that nut squirrel monster that was like throwing nuts everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
And all the stuff with the money with Noelle and Umika, like going, like sort of her perceptions of money and things like that. That was a fun one too. Kind of a friendship episode, I guess, with Noelle and Umika, which is not the pairing that I thought they were going to go with, but they made a fun little pair. 27 was maybe my favorite of this bunch, just because
it may be my favorite episode of Lupinranger.
Yeah,
period.
Yeah, I don't know how to disagree with that because I don't have an alternative episode. It's like, well, no, it would be this one. Like, this episode was terrific. Oh my god. Tuma
what was the martial? I can't remember what the martial arts they were calling the martial arts. It was like empty
muscle, MUSCLE. Yeah, they're like muscle, and he was like Sakuya kept like spelling it out while they were doing it. But yeah, Toma and Sakuya going to that dojo and like learning quote unquote martial arts, but it's basically just aerobics. And they're in the
just completely straight-faced Toma doing these martial arts with 100% conviction because that's just what happened to him.
Yeah, Toma and Sakuya pairing up Sakuya with Umika has not always yielded the most fun. It is kind of a fun little side thing, but Sakuya and Toma are a really, really funny, like straight man and foil type thing. Just kind of classic comedy bit, and they work. And I was like, this is the team up the show needs all the time because they are ridiculously funny together. They did a lot of kind of anime-ish, Looney Tunes-ish elements with funny jokes and stuff like that overlaid across the screen, like seeing Toma's like irritation meter at the bottom of the bar and stuff like that.
Yes.
Oh, that was a really,
and that
really
final
good episode.
Attack, that glorious final attack. I'm happy I captured that. Like I needed a screen grab of that.
Sakuya
it was
pumping his fists and kicking. Oh my god, that was terrific.
Splendid.
And then 28 was the one with Umika's dad. And he's very upset that she's dropped out of school and is pursuing this thief lifestyle. And he's sort of chasing her while also being upset at Kairi because he assumes that they're an item, basically.
Mm-hmm. Then we have that the monster that ages people when they get hit with that gas. But can also dive and swim through walls and ceilings. Oh, sorry, walls and floors.
Naturally. I think the thing that stood out to me, I like this episode, I thought this was good, Umika getting some good high point moments and such, but I think my favorite bit was how the first part of the episode felt, I mean this is going to sound strange, but it felt very, very Mighty Morphin to me. Having a monster that turns people old just feels like a sort of Mighty Morphin plot just in general. They run around in a park for a while getting chased by the Gangler and the Poldermans, and then there's even a bunch of like really kind of like kind of guitar in the background, which is, it just all kind of felt, it all like a kind of like a low key reference. I doubt it was, but it just kind of had that feel, you know, like this could have been a Power Rangers subplot.
The Polderman getting hit by the gas, of course, to show you what happens. Like,
that was a great bit.
Suddenly he's got a beard and his back hurts. It's so. What a delight.
Yeah.
What a treat.
And we saw the new Lupin Red. Kairi got a new weapon, the bow. And we got to see a huge combo attack that I thought was actually pretty cool with that. That was all good stuff. So, and I think the new Lupin, the new Versus Changer, the sort of like a silvery, like Zeppelin blimp kind of rocket shape.
Yes.
That combined, and I actually like because it changes out not only Lupin Kaiser's left arm, but also the head. And I think I actually prefer this look to the base Lupin Kaiser with the kind of the gray head. And I really enjoy the magic card trick element and turning that building into dresser drawers that the kaiju is like digging through shirts and boxers and stuff.
That's right, yeah.
It's completely ridiculous. I loved it. Yeah, so it was a really good batch of episodes. Definitely made me sad that we did not watch them together. I completely agree.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Yes. So let's rectify that. Let's watch 29 together. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic.
All right. Well, you give me the countdown, my man. Let's hop into it.
この番組は楽しい時を作るグループ PRT とザ・コミックフィンドとご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
And we're back. So that was a recap episode, huh?
Yeah, not. I don't know if it's surprising, just our luck or whatever. A string of 4 really great episodes we didn't watch together, and then we finally get a chance to watch one together. It's a recap. But that being said,
kind of appropriate.
Yeah, it is. It's both, I think, sort of appropriate that happened to us, but also, I think strides have been made in making recap episodes not just clip shows these days, and I think this one was just fun enough that I still enjoyed watching it. So, but
and then just to sum it up real quick, Keiichiro gets his memories knocked out of him by a modified Polderman, and so the memories are these like just photographs that fly out of his head, and they kind of like remember them as they go on. And eventually the Lupinrangers show up, and that jogs his memory.
Yep.
And he just sucks all the memories back into his brain, and then they just kind of show a bunch of clips, like, like, oh, remember that time we did the thing? But I think a funny or a neat little comedic beat is there wasn't a kaiju in fight. Like, there wasn't like a new kaiju fight for this, and so this says, oh, usually when I show up, there's a kaiju fight, but Ghosh isn't here, and so then they just showed clips of all the Kaiser fights. So
right, yeah. So it was. I enjoyed it actually. I think doing a little postcard memories thing. I think the comedy in between moments were quite strong. There was a little throwaway gag with Keiichiro trying to remember who Commissioner Hilltop was, and they cut away to Commissioner Hilltop in like a Letterman jacket kind of thing, and he looks like Keiichiro mistakes him for Eddie Murphy from Beverly Hills Cop, which was not a connection I would have drawn but they put him in the jacket. I was like, okay, actually, kind of like it was a funny little gag. They did a Good Striker recounting what normally happens, and then that not happening was a pretty funny little bit too, I thought. So it was good. It was funny. It was a lot of fun. And I think that there was enough new action there too that I don't think it was like a completely lost exercise, certainly.
Yeah. And we're at about the right time that they would air a recap. We're at what are we at? 29?
Yeah, 29.
So either things are about to start getting real, or we're about halfway through the show, so it's time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the another nice element to that, I guess, is like even if we've done the other ones as we normally do, it was kind of nice as a recap to. I guess I don't. It's very strange for me now because I don't often watch shows weekly anymore, and encounter a clip episode all that often. Like, that just doesn't happen that much. I usually encounter clip episodes when I'm watching something that's already finished, so I can just kind of skip through it if I need to, or just not pay as much attention to it. So it was weird to have a recap that actually sort of performed its function. Like, kind of like, oh yeah, this is what's happening. We've done all this. Yeah. No, okay, I remember this now. Like, it was an interesting experience. Yeah, so there's not too terribly much to say, I guess. It was a recap, but it's certainly good to be back, and it was good to see everybody again. And an interesting observation I thought was there's a final sort of welcome party scene. Noel throws himself, hosts his own welcome party, which is very Noel.
Mm-hmm.
But also that scene, it's at night, and it's on a rooftop, and it looks. I mean, of course, this would have been a couple weeks ago, because we're probably 5 or 6 weeks ago or so, but I think the timing lines up about right. It looks almost identical to the sort of Last Supper the characters in Kamen Rider Build have before they go and attack the sky wall, like the final tower, which I just thought was interesting. It's like, I was wondering, would they just like shoot those both on the same day or same week or something like that on that set?
Yeah, we got to see what the timing of that was, because I feel like this might have aired around the same time, because this is 29 and we're at 34 now. Yeah, it's about a month ago. Yeah, so just about the same time, or like a week or two offset from when Build was wrapping up, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I think what might be a more... Pat, do you have any other thoughts on this episode particularly?
No. I don't
okay. So I think what might be a more interesting exercise, since there's not too terribly much to talk about, it was a clip show, it had some good funny gags, but was ultimately a clip show. We're at 29 now, so we're expecting, I don't know if they've announced how many they're going to be, but we're looking, high 40s, to 50 to wrap the series. What do you? I guess let's frame it this way. What have you enjoyed maybe the most so far in the show, and what do you hope for the most going into the sort of latter half of the series? Kind of putting you on the spot, but I'm asking myself those questions too.
What have I enjoyed the most? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Keiichiro. I think he's just this real sweet dude that's getting tricked by people that he thinks are his friends. And I think they're abusing him, or they're not treating him very well. And I'm looking forward to him getting his revenge. So I don't know why I said it like that. But no, but I will say I do enjoy the Patrangers and Keiichiro a lot. And a sort of back and forth. I feel like I want more of them, and then maybe going forward, I don't know, like if I think we may have said this before, but something like that, not necessarily more of a focus on them, but something that like I'm having difficulty. I'm kind of just taking this as it comes to demand more of it. The only thing I could really say I want more of is like if they're going to add more, like another person to mix things up, because Noelle showing up and being both the silver and the gold has been like odd, to say the least.
Sure. No. I mean, I think we knew there'd be another Ranger. I was still holding out for a third team. I thought that would be fun. But having a extra Ranger that kind of plays on both sides there was not what I expected, certainly. I'm watching so many episodes back to back and thinking about it more. I think what I'm coming to appreciate about Noelle is not necessarily, I don't think he necessarily adds much to either team individually. Like, I don't think I don't see a scene with the Lupinrangers and go, oh, thank God Noelle's here. Or I don't see a scene with the Patrangers and go, oh, great, Noelle's here. Like, he doesn't really add anything to those teams individually. What I think is interesting is he allows them to tell stories with both teams sort of working in concert while maintaining their antagonism towards one another. Like, because he's playing both sides, you can sort of have the teams work together. They don't really work together, except for, like, very explicitly in episode 25, right? They antagonism, but sort of connect them in a way. And I don't think I really appreciated that when he showed up. And I don't think I necessarily, like, as an individual character, I'm like, but as a device to allow that, I actually really appreciate that. He can he can bridge the teams without necessarily overshadowing anyone, really. So I like that. I actually like that. I guess for myself, I think the thing that everything that's come so far, the first 29 that we've watched here, the thing that I'm really, really pleased with is the fact that the teams have largely maintained their identity, and that we've still gotten a fair amount of development for everybody on both teams. And I still feel like they're sticking with the verses. It did not just become a really big team, right? So I'm very happy with that, and I think that's still, I think that gives the show its distinct feel, without either team really being like quote unquote evil, right? Like I don't know if Hurricane's the same way, but I think of like Power Rangers Ninja Storm, where you have the core three and the two what were they? Were Thunder? No, was it Thunder Ninjas? I think it was Thunder Ninjas. They were the two brothers who were sort of an antagonistic other teams. You had like a team of 2 versus a team of 3, and then they eventually joined. But I like that they're just sort of sticking with the versus thing, and they haven't pulled back on that yet. But I think going forward, the big thing that I still want is I don't actually need the show to focus on the Mafia Kaijin, but I'm still just begging you, please tell me what is their goal. Like, what are they after? Give me some kind of bigger plot to sort of hang my hat on and say, okay, here's what these monsters are really going for. So yeah, that's still my big hope for the show.
Yeah, it just seems like they've stolen the Lupin items or Lupin collection items for something. They're just trying to decide who's going to be the new boss.
Yeah, it's like they've got them and they give powers, but they're going to do shrug with them. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah, and they keep losing them because the Lupin Rangers keep reclaiming them and storing them away.
Right. It's just
okay. The Lupin Rangers have been doing that. Is it odd that the Patrangers have done nothing about, okay, well, they're stealing them, so what? Like, it doesn't seem like they're interested in recollecting them, or I guess even aware or care about, I guess, retrieving the evidence. Like, it's I'm not demanding that of it, but it's interesting that they're ignoring it.
Yeah, no, I would
right?
I would agree. I would agree with that too.
Hmm.
I still think I'm really net positive on the show. I'm really, really enjoying it. It is a nice, I think, after Kamen Rider Build, which was quite heavy throughout. I mean, it was still a children's Karate Bugman Punch show, but it was pretty heavy throughout and quite plot heavy, or lots of things going on, lots of threads to keep up with. This isn't quite as risky in that sense, and I like it as a counter to that. But we do actually have David Skasny, Twitter Mutual, asked some questions of us, and he asked quite a few. So do you want to go ahead and tackle those?
Let's do it.
Okay. So he's got a few for us. All right, got a few for you guys for 25 and 27. On 25, thoughts on Good Cool Kaiser being entirely CG. I know you guys enjoy the hard suits, but personally, after years of watching them bring them all together, forms be immovable monoliths, I really like how dynamic this debut was. So what are your thoughts on that?
I've been looking forward to Mecha Shiva in some form, and I'm happy it showed up. I imagine at some point we'll get a hard suit version. I don't know if that's crazy, but yeah, I think it's really cool, and especially I think we talked about it on the episode during the recap, but the way it did its final attack, punching and kicking all of the verse changer vehicles at the enemy or at Limon for the attack was just really fun and cool. I was that's awesome.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think particularly anytime you have a form that has that many robots combining into it, they tend to become, even if the other ones are all immovable rectangular, prisms, they become really, really immovable and just huge and bulky. Mm-hmm. So giving this one that much, it still has a bunch of motion to it and everything. I really enjoyed it. I'm not completely against CG. I tend to prefer your hard suits. I tend to prefer practical effects, but I'll still take good CG. I'm okay with it. And I can see where this design, I don't think you could really do it in a hard suit. Not on a television budget, certainly. Okay, so for 27, this is an unabashed comedy episode. Definitely not one of my favorites, but I got a good chuckle out of it. That said, in my years within the fandom, the most consistent complaint criticism I've seen of Toku is its comedy. Whether it's the comedy relief character specifically being maligned as a bad or useless addition to the cast, a perceived cultural gap between Western and Eastern modes of comedy that prevent people from getting the jokes, the idea that modern Toku tries and fails to be live-action anime, or that comedy creates tonal dissonance, whiplash, and otherwise great dramas and ruins the show, people within the fandom have always seemed to struggle with comedy. In your opinions, what is the importance of comedy as a narrative to Toku specifically? What type of comedy works for you? That's a big, big question.
Oof. What kind of comedy works for you?
Well, I guess, do you want to tackle the first part with whether that the comedy, how we feel about comedy in Toku?
I think it's required. I think it's necessary to keep things light. Whether or not it's handled well is another question. But if the series, I think it works on two fronts. One, either where it's a regular thing and you expect the slapstick, and it sort of is a way for you to see another side of the characters. A strong example of this, I feel is Build. When we find out, whatever spoilers, it's in the past already. Yeah. Sorry, and you're past this.
Yeah, and
but
you're
when
watching
we find
Zeo,
out
you're living in the future, man.
No. Yeah, exactly. When we find out that I've just been calling him Beardo because I forgot his name already. We find out that Beardo has no sense, no fashion sense.
Oh, Gentoku?
Yeah, when Gentoku is revealed as having no fashion sense, it's very much in line with him because we've only ever seen him in a uniform. So it turns out it's this weird long-running, long-form joke that they've set up because he's either only in uniform or only in his punished outfit. And then when he's finally able to relax and be at ease with people he considers friends, he can reveal part of himself, which is that he's just got this really eclectic sense of style. So I think that kind of comedy is perfect. I will maybe, if in the comedic moment we are given a character that doesn't match who we've become familiar with,
right,
maybe that's when it's not that dissonance doesn't work, or does work if it's really well done. But I would say that the comedy that we saw in episode 27 was in line very much with how the characters would act. Toma being convinced that this is something he has to do. Sakuya eagerly leading the class. And then just this beautiful, beautiful moment and eye catch that we're treated to during the martial arts lesson.
Right. Yeah, comedy is always a tough one. Comedy is incredibly subjective. I mean, forget about cultural divides. Comedy can be subjective in the room. Comedy can be subjective time of day. I mean, even a joke so much of comedy is context, right? How much of Will Ferrell's career, which I tend to enjoy a fair amount of Will Ferrell's work, but how much of his career is just, I have the wrong tone of voice for this social situation, right? And that's just it. It's using the context, or you have a really funny joke or really smart joke. May not go over well if you're in a funeral, or maybe it will. Like timing and context and all that stuff is really, really important. Like, comedy is not, it's very, very subjective, and it's not something you can just pull out and go, okay, this is a good joke because So it's really, really tough, especially across cultural divides. I personally, I don't know how to say. I tend to enjoy, and I think this is going to inform my response to this too. I tend to enjoy comedy that is revealing of the character. Character-based comedy is very, very, very funny. Like you said, episode 27 is really funny to me just because it is so much about who Toma and Sakuya are as characters. And so the ridiculous situation, it doesn't necessarily matter. I'm sort of praising or reconfiguring a Jack Kirby quote here, but it doesn't really matter what's going on as long as the emotional reality is there. So if the characters are acting as who we expect them to be, their circumstances are completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter how slapstick or over the top or monkey cheese it gets. And so like 27 is a great example of that, I think, because it is about those two characters in the situation it doesn't make sense. I mean, the other characters are literally looking in the window going, these guys are getting duped. Like, they're just doing aerobics. Like, it's a complete joke. So I tend to be okay with comedy, at least the attempt of it. I think it's a good pressure release. I tend to not. I just tend to be somebody who makes jokes in situations that stress me out anyway. It's a great defense mechanism. So, but I tend to not enjoy works that are just joyless, I guess. Real life is often funny, or you at least laugh to keep from crying. It's sometimes boring, it's sometimes exciting, it's sometimes dramatic, but comedy is a part of life. It's how we deal with awkward situations. It's how we deal with our stress levels and stuff. So I think it's fine to have characters crack a joke. Like, Build, having, again, a good example, having Gintoku wear these, it makes no sense within the context of the show why he would have these emotive shirts. Like, it makes no sense. Like, how did he go out and print a bunch of them? Like, you can't. It's just a really funny joke, and it works because he's so serious all the time, but that release is part of what makes it work so great. So, I tend to be a fan of comedy just as a rule, and I try to meet comedy halfway. Like, I know jokes can be tough, especially across cultural divides and things like that. I'd like to think that I've got some level of familiarity, I guess. Like, I've watched a lot of Gintama, or I've watched all of Gintama, which sometimes can get pretty inside baseball with the Japanese cultural references, but again, so much of that is character based that it works. So doing the live action anime thing does not really bother me as much either. I'm fine with it, even if I don't always find it funny. It is very different from what is often the Western style tradition, which, at least in my experience, I don't want to say is all across the board, but certainly the popular version of comedy here is somewhat cynical. You roll your eyes at what's going on, or make some snide comment and go, I can't believe this, or even things like anti-humor, that kind of like Tim and Eric show type stuff. That's just stuff that isn't like, I don't really know. I haven't watched enough of that show to really say, but a lot of the skits I've seen from it are just like, the joke is that nothing in it is funny and it just keeps going. A lot of that doesn't do that much for me. So I appreciate the live action anime feel because it's different. So even if I'm not laughing all the time. Okay, so I think we've covered that. Whew, we really quickly summed up all of comedy.
Yeah.
And then finally, schedules permitting, would you ever consider running a one-shot D&D campaign for the pod in the vein of Hyperforce, either using the Henshin RPG campaign or if they release an official rulebook for Hyperforce. As always, thanks Senpai for noticing me. No, thank you, David.
Thanks for the perfect signing out on that.
Yeah, right? That's terrific.
It was lovely. Yeah.
No, but so he's referring to a couple things here. First off, would we ever consider running a one-shot or even a campaign or something like that, either on the pod of a tabletop role-playing game? I certainly would, because that is like secretly my real hobby. Like tabletop RPGs are like that's what occupies 60% of my brain at all times. And he mentions two RPGs particularly, Henshin and Hyperforce. So unless you were living under a rock for PR fandom type stuff, Power Rangers Hyperforce was a thing, which Hyperforce is like a gaming streaming channel, and they had a bunch of current and former Power Rangers actors, as well as some like YouTubers and various internet personalities playing a Power Rangers RPG. And at the time, Spawn Brands signed off on it and made it official and canon. So Hyperforce is like a legit team that got their own suit designs and everything. Now, since then, they said at the time they were playing a modified version of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which is owned by Hasbro. Well, now Hasbro owns the Power Rangers brand. So, in theory, they could release whatever rule set that was that they used and release an official Power Rangers RPG. For me, I would love to see that. I don't know if the D&D mechanics would necessarily lend themselves to a Sentai type thing, but you know, if they've done something like it already, right, that the groundwork's been laid to some degree. But he also mentions Henshin, which is a very small kind of indie game, which I do have all the files for. The core, I hesitate to call it a book. It's like 12 pages as a PDF, but the core, quote unquote, is free, and then you can pay for a couple of the add-on packs, basically, and other playbooks and things, or other classes, I guess is the best way to put it. If you've never played a Powered by the Apocalypse style game, they're only about like $2 each, and I think the grand total is like $6 to have everything ever made for it. Henshin is a totally different beast. Henshin is completely diceless, uses the system is sort of, if you've played any of the Powered by the Apocalypse stuff, like Apocalypse World or Dungeon World or anything like that, it's got a similar sort of feel in terms of, you don't really have character classes, you have what are called playbooks, which are sort of more like, I don't want to say they're like ideas, but they're somewhere between just like a character concept and a class. And you have these things called moves, which are these really well-defined narrative effects that you have and that have some kind of mechanics in them, but there's no dice. You just sort of, you do things that sort of like, you know, risk your character to gain points, as it were, and then you spend those points to actually accomplish things in fiction. So there's this kind of ebb and flow where you like, your character like risks themselves or hurts other people or makes a bad mistake, and you build up points, and then you spend those points to save the day, so to speak. That's a really quick super rundown of two very different games, but I mean, the long and the short of it is, yes. I have run a somewhat short, in Discord with a couple of Toku Twitter heads, I ran a very short-lived sort of Toku game using Fate, but I didn't quite like how Fate handled it, and time-wise, it didn't pan out. But I think a one-shot would definitely be doable. I've also got a couple of homebrew rule sets of my own that I've cooked up for Toku stuff. The thing with Toku is, where do you draw the line? Because on the one hand, you could just make it standard superheroes, because that is sort of what it is ultimately. But particularly, I mean, you know, Kamen Riders and Super Sentai and Garo and all that, they all kind of have, really, the heroes aren't really that different in terms of power sets. I mean, you get a little bit of that. You get, you know, sometimes somebody can move really fast or has super strength or can stop time or something like that. But for the most part, all the characters have pretty similar movesets, pretty similar equipment. What differentiates them is their personalities and like what they're passionate about and that sort of thing. So crunchier superhero games don't, which usually, because they're based on Western superheroes, usually put a lot of time and energy into like defining power rules and stuff like that. Like, how does flight work? How does telekinesis work? How does matter control work? Which it's not like it doesn't fit entirely for Tokusatsu, but it doesn't quite get the intent isn't there. The focus is different. So the big question with Toku is always, what system to pick. But I could definitely see myself doing I think that'd be a fun thing to do. Maybe we could plan on doing that once we finish Lupinranger vs. Patranger. Maybe do a little one shot with some folks on air. That'd be fun, because Pat, you don't really play much, if any, tabletop stuff, do you?
No, I have so little experience with it. I would say that one maybe would end up being, I guess, sort of live streamed in a way. Like, not. I don't think it'd be a regular podcast, or I'd maybe have somebody edit that one separately, because I imagine it would be super long compared to what these are. Or just put them all up as it is.
It depends.
Like, I don't know.
I've done online games before, and if you're doing it with the intent of keeping it a one shot, and your GM knows what he's doing, which cough cough, I've been running games for a very, very long time, so I can stick to a time limit. You could probably keep it to about an hour and a half, and still have quite a bit of fun. So, especially if the system is light enough, like something like Henshin, I think would be great for a one-shot. I don't know if it quite has the meat on its bones to run a whole campaign, which is my almost always a concern for me, because I like running longer campaigns. But Henshin can do a one-shot, no problem. So, and I have been toying around with running another. I tend to run a lot of play-by-post games just because they fit my ridiculous schedule, and their asynchronous nature is really helpful to me. So I've been toying around with the idea of running one here again. So we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, one shot is definitely in the cards. I think that'd be a lot of fun to put together a team. Some podcasters with attitude, if you will.
Yeah, I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Could run you through your first game.
So tentative, yes. It's just, yeah, time permitting was the...
Time permitting is the big part, but is it in the cards? Most definitely. It is most definitely in the cards. I can't say no to role-playing games. But, yeah, so, well, if there's nothing else, Pat, it was a lot of fun. Glad to be back in the saddle. Hopefully we can keep catching up and try to have another pod out a little bit sooner than last time.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yep.
And thanks, David, for those questions. Really, a lot of really terrific questions there.
Yeah. Shout out to our Patreon patrons.
Yes.
I believe Solar Johanna and 120. 120?
I say 120. I know who you're talking about. I say 120. I hope he doesn't mind.
Yeah. And much love to Tokusatsu Network once again for bringing us in. This is... It's a new age. It's yeah. It is very strange, but really exciting stuff.
I'm super excited. I can't believe it. So,
thanks for tuning in to the Super Senpai Podcast. We'll notice you again next time.
Super Senpai Podcast.